Hello everyone and welcome back to the Bookmark. My name is Kayla and today we're going to be doing a book review on The Stand-In. So this book is pretty easy to read through. It kind of falls into like more of like a romance, but it does have a lot of other themes in there that make this more than just a romantic story. What's pretty cool is that I actually got this book from Target and it's part of Target's book club. So right now I think Target is the only retailer that sells this in person, but I believe you can get this book online. There's also like a ebook version of this book, so if that's more of your style, you prefer ebooks, you can also get it through there too. Yeah, and I want to say that this book is actually pretty easy to get through. I want to say that my total reading hours for this book was about 8-ish hours. So if you're in a reading slump and you want to find something a little bit outside of your normal range, I would definitely say pick up this book because part of the book, kind of the premise of it is that there's this girl, her name is Gracie Reed. Turns out like she ends up looking a lot like a famous actress from China. Her name is, I hope I don't butcher this, but it's Wei Fang Li. And she happens to get discovered by a paparazzi, and it turns out that Wei Fang Li is also going to be filming in Toronto, so it does take place in Canada. And then they find each other, and Wei Fang Li has this idea that Gracie would then stand in for her whenever she has events that she doesn't want to go to because she's feeling a bit burnt out. So that's kind of the premise of this. And then also she has to go with Wei Fang Li's escort, Sam Yao, to all these events, and it's basically the book is about her transforming herself to fit this new lifestyle because everything that Fang Li has to go through, like the way she walks, the way she dresses, like what type of makeup she wears, and like even her mannerisms, because so many people know Fang Li that the way she like walks or waves will be noticeable if it's different. But for some weird reason, Gracie and Fang Li look very similar, even though what's pretty cool about this character is that Gracie Reed is actually half Chinese and she's half Canadian, versus Fang Li, who is both of her parents are Chinese. So that's a pretty cool thing, is that we see a character who is biracial in this book. And what I thought was really cool to see was that there were elements in which Gracie was experiencing Fang Li's life, and sometimes when she wasn't, but she was around like the theater or around some of like high like super wealthy people in Canada that would go to the events, and she just heard like how much racism was towards Chinese people, especially Chinese immigrants in Canada. And even what I think is pretty cool is that even though Gracie has some Asian friends, and eventually when she meets Fang Li and Sam, there's even some comments that say that, oh, I would never think that you were only half Chinese because you look full Chinese. And so there's always like this inner monologue in her head where she's just saying that, like, just because she's half, does that mean that she's not good enough to be considered Chinese? And I'm like trying to figure, like, I think that's a really cool concept to bring up in this book. It doesn't really go deep into it, so it's not like anything philosophical or anything like that, but there are some like cool questions to recognize that even some people who are part of a racial group are prejudiced towards people who are biracial. That was pretty cool. But of course, most often was the kind of what I thought was really cool is the different from books that talk about racial identities is that in this book, that's like not the premise at all, but it's sprinkled in there because it's very integral to Gracie's character and how she interacts with her environment. So you see a whole bunch of like microaggressions, which basically are comments or actions that people do against like a minority person or someone of like a different identity or a protected identity. and it's like it's in a way passive aggressive. So there's comments where she's at a theater. This is not really a big spoiler, but this kind of an example. Gracie is at a theater and she's sitting, and it has Chinese actors in it. Actually has Sam and Fang Li in there in that play. And there is two women. It doesn't say their race or anything, but it does say that there's two women that sit near her that are talking about how they were thinking about looking at a musical that was later for the day, but they decided to go with this one. I didn't realize it was such a cultural pick. Or that there was another one where Sam is like supposed to be, he like has the title, officially has the title of Sexiest Man Alive for that year that this book takes place in, and the women say he's really good looking for an Oriental man. And it's like comments like that. And then there's other things that happen to Gracie that what I like about this book is that it brings up the microaggressions, but it doesn't make it Gracie's like moments of development, of character development. It's more like this is an everyday thing, and a lot of the time she has to just turn the cheek, even though we know in her inner monologue that she really wants to say something. And especially like the times when she hears it when she's Fang Li, she wants to say something, but she's also thinking about her image, because it's not just Gracie's image on the line, but it's Fang Li's image on the line if Gracie were to say something to these very wealthy investors and influential people in Canada. So I think that is kind of a lot, like kind of sums up a lot of what like people of minority also think about too. Not just people who are biracial, kind of thinking about, you know, your reputation, because that's what you have, as far as like how you appear to other people and how that could be something you don't want to ruin, but by doing so you allow for things like microaggressions to happen. So I think that's a really cool, like, interesting dynamic that we see in this book, because people who don't understand that struggle, like I was reading through it and I was like, wow, like some of the things that people were telling her, like very casually, I was just like, oh my gosh, like that's like, and some things I wouldn't have ever thought were like something mean to have said, but she brings it up and saying how it does infringe on like her identity and her perception of herself, and how it even like goes on to making her like kind of go through this whole character development of being like stepping up for herself and having confidence in herself, which I think is a really cool message to have for this book. I'm trying to think of like something that I didn't really like, but I honestly really liked this book. It was kind of an impulse buy, honestly. When I saw it at Target, I just saw it on the shelf and it just said a little sign that said like book club of the month. And I was like, oh, well, this sounds cool, because I just really like the whole like doppelganger thing, mostly because I have a twin sister, but we don't look alike, but there's always like that twin stereotype that you would look alike and y'all can be doppelgangers. So I just thought that was pretty cool that even though they're technically not twins, they still looked very much alike to be one, or in this case, Gracie to be Fang Li. But yeah, I would definitely say that this book is actually really easy to get into as well. Like within the first like 5-10 pages, I didn't want to put the book down, and typically I have this rule that like I have to get through the first 50 pages in the first sit down to really determine like, am I gonna sit for the next like 8, 9, 10 hours to read this book. I mean, obviously not in one sitting, but sometimes yes, in one sitting, but am I actually going to finish this book or not? And this one, I could immediately tell within 10 pages that I was going to finish this book. So that's something to say about this one. The way the pacing of the book goes, I would say that the chapters are really short in some times, and other times they're a little bit longer. So if you're looking for a book that has like very fast pacing, maybe in the first half of the book it's going a little slow, mostly because they're talking about Gracie's transition to being Gracie to being Fang Li and all that process. So it's like kind of like her boot camp training type of thing. But then it goes into, it kind of like speeds up when she's already gotten her training and then she's going to events, and then it goes on with her relationships with Sam and with Fang Li, and of course her mom is very much like a pivotal role in this. I will say that this book also talks about mental health and seeking out help, like as far as therapy or medication, and it says it like in a really positive light. There's not like a very big traumatic event that happens around this, so if that is one of your triggers, just, you know, with caution. But I will say that it's not very it talks about it but more in a positive way, so that's something. Another thing is that her mom is actually the relationship between Gracie and her mom. It's kind of weird because I'm trying to like pinpoint whether or not they were actually really close, because her dad is he's passed away for some time, but she still thinks about him, and it kind of seems like as if Gracie was more like closer with her dad than with her mom, but she's taking care of her mom. I don't know, it's kind of weird. I guess her relationship's more like she feels like duty bound to help out her mom, because her mom is experiencing Alzheimer's, and so that's something that that's one of her like main reasons for doing this whole like transformation. Another thing that happens in this book that will kind of like bring it up is that there is like mentionings of Gracie having gone through sexual harassment at her workplace. I think it's very satisfying what happens to the person harassing her, but that's also another thing. It doesn't go into very much detail about the actual physical, like what was actually going on, mostly because Gracie does not want to process that, and this book is in first person, so it's also Gracie just not wanting to process all what happened with that coworker. But there is mentions of it, so be aware of that if that is something you can handle, or if you're recommending this for a much younger audience, because it is a book that you can easily give to like about a 14-year-old ish. I would say 15 maybe, but just be aware that those are some of the contents that are being talked about in this book before you go and pass it around and give it to some young readers out there. But yeah, so I don't know if this book is like very popular like on Book Talk or on Instagram. I have not seen anything about it, which I'm very confused because it's a really good book, and I would assume that there would have been like a little bit more buzz about this book, which I definitely think this book deserves a little bit more buzz, because it's really well written. I like the pacing of it, and I like the topics that are discussed. Like, it's not too in depth with like these big heavy topics, but it has enough that where you can feel like as if Gracie Reed is a character, or is not a character, but like it's actually a person that the author just wrote like a biography of. So that is something that I think that's personally like a really like good thing about this book, is that how realistic Gracie's character is. Of course, some of the other characters like Sam Yao, like he's supposed to be like not really a realistic character, only because of like I guess how handsome he's supposed to be and how smooth he is, but we see little cracks in his like exterior shell or whatever. But yeah, so I would definitely recommend this to anyone. You do have to be kind of a little bit more about wanting to read about it, like a romance, but also hearing about this whole like doppelganger type of thing. It's definitely like a book that I like, and that's because I don't really like romance, and romance isn't like the main thing in this book, but there's like a little bit sprinkled here and there, so I think that's pretty cool too. But yeah, let us know what you think about this book if you pick it up, which I highly suggest you do. Of course, it's at Target. This is not a sticker I could peel off. It's like printed on there because I think Target is selling this in person because it is originally an ebook. So I do know it is available on ebook. I'm not too sure if it's available anywhere else other than Target, but there is a Target almost everywhere, and there's also to shop on Target's website to get this book. But yeah, let us know what you think if you read this book, and let us know down in the comments below what other types of books you want us to read, what you're excited about, and also, yeah, just anything else about that. If you want to see more daily content, you should follow us on our Instagram at the bookmark. That has like all these other things on that thing, but will be linked down in the description. So yeah, thank you. Bye.